Carl Jung reveals why being single could be the smartest choice of your life. As Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Too often, society convinces us that happiness only comes from being with someone else. But what if the greatest act of wisdom is choosing yourself first? In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we will uncover why being single may actually be the smartest choice of your life, and how embracing solitude can lead to deeper self-discovery, personal growth, and true happiness. Do you agree with Jung's perspective, or do you see relationships differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your insight might inspire someone else's journey. 1. Love versus fear of loneliness. Much of what the world praises as love is, in truth, often a quiet fear of being alone, a disguise for an emptiness people would rather not face. From childhood, society whispers that worth is measured by whether you find someone to complete you, whether you can display to the world that you are wanted, desired, chosen. Yet when fear, rather than freedom, guides the heart, the relationship becomes a refuge from silence instead of a union of wholeness. In these cases, devotion is not born from abundance, but from avoidance, not from joy, but from the panic of solitude. It is here that Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom invites us to pause and question our own motives, to ask whether what we call love is truly love or merely dependency wrapped in comforting words. Relationships often become an escape route, a carefully constructed way of fleeing the stillness of our own soul. Two people may come together not out of fullness, but to cover the void inside each of them, using each other like bandages over unhealed wounds. And yet, as Jung reminds us, spirituality and spiritual awakening begin when you dare to sit with that void instead of fleeing from it. Solitude becomes a teacher, a mirror, a place where you are forced to confront the unmasked truth of who you are. When you allow yourself to dwell in silence, to hear the unspoken language of your inner life, you stop needing to drown it out with shallow companionship. This is why many of the deepest transformations happen not in the noise of love stories, but in the sacred stillness of being alone. Jung's most piercing question cuts through the illusions we so easily cling to. At the end of life, when the room is dim and the body is loosening its grip on consciousness, what will matter most is not how many people you were with, but whether you truly lived your own life. Did you walk your own path, or did you simply accompany someone else on theirs? This haunting image forces us to strip away excuses and confront the truth. We cannot take borrowed identities, borrowed dreams, or borrowed loves into eternity. Only the authenticity of our journey remains, and in that moment, the fear of being alone will reveal how much it has stolen from us if we let it guide our choices. In today's world, where social media parades picture-perfect relationships and dating apps offer instant validation, solitude is often painted as a flaw to fix. The pressure to prove love, to prove belonging, pushes many into relationships not because their soul expands there, but because they cannot bear the silence of being unseen. Yet spiritual awakening requires rebellion against this conditioning. It asks you to look within and ask, am I choosing love because it liberates me, or because it numbs me? Am I with this person because they reflect my wholeness, or because they distract me from my emptiness? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are the doorway to wisdom. The truth is that solitude is not an absence, but a presence. It is the fertile ground where you learn to stand in your own light, to hear your own voice, to recognize that you are already complete. When you embrace solitude, you stop seeking someone to rescue you from yourself and begin to build a relationship with your own soul. This is not loneliness, it is strength. It is clarity. It is the foundation of true love. Only when you are whole within can love become an expansion instead of an escape. Jung's wisdom reminds us that fear-driven unions will always drain the spirit. But love, born of inner abundance, has the power to awaken and transform. And so, the greatest act of spirituality may not be finding another to complete you, but becoming so whole in yourself that when love finally comes, it is no longer about running away from loneliness, but about walking together in freedom. If you've ever felt the difference between love and the fear of loneliness, now is the time to claim your truth. Comment below, "I choose love over fear," to affirm your commitment to living with courage and clarity. 2. The hidden cost of relationships. Culture glorifies love and relationships as the ultimate goal, yet Carl Jung's wisdom reveals a deeper truth. Behind the glitter of romance often lies a hidden cost that few are willing to acknowledge. In the pursuit of harmony, countless people bury their desires, abandon their dreams, and quietly betray themselves just to maintain the illusion of peace. What begins as passion frequently turns into dependency, a subtle chain that demands endless compromise until individuality fades into the background. Day by day, the self bends, shrinks, and reshapes to fit the expectations of another, until one looks in the mirror and no longer recognizes who they are. Many relationships, while praised as companionship and security, are in reality emotional cages, comfortable prisons disguised as love. They promise peace, yet silence the soul. Jung understood that true spirituality and spiritual development are born not from conformity, but from authenticity, from the courage to listen to the inner voice that whispers of freedom and self-discovery. Love itself is not the enemy, but attachment without awareness can suffocate the very spirit it was meant to nurture. Look at the modern world, and you will see this pattern everywhere. Men and women remaining in jobs, friendships, or marriages not because they are fulfilled, but because they fear what solitude might reveal. Yet solitude is not emptiness. It is the soil where transformation takes root. It is within silence that creativity reawakens, forgotten passions resurface, and a truer sense of self emerges. While society romanticizes partnership, it rarely acknowledges the profound courage it takes to walk alone. And yet, this choice, often misunderstood, is among the smartest one can make, because it gives you back to yourself. Solitude offers the gift of clarity, the strength to stand firm, and the space to grow into the person you were always meant to be. To remain single is not to be broken or incomplete, but to stand whole within yourself, free from the pressure of living through someone else's story. Spirituality teaches that true fulfillment begins within, not in the approval or constant presence of another. If love arrives, it will meet you in your wholeness, not in your need. And if it does not, you remain complete, radiant in your own light. The lesson is clear. Do not allow fear of loneliness or cultural expectations to dictate your life. To choose solitude is to choose freedom. And in that freedom, your spirit awakens to its highest potential. reminding you that sometimes the most sacred love story is the one you write with yourself. If this message opened your eyes to the hidden costs of relationships, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep growing in truth and wisdom together. 3. Solitude as radical freedom. Solitude is not emptiness, but radical freedom. The sacred ground where your true self finally has room to breathe and expand. When you step away from the noise of society's expectations and the constant pull of relationships, you discover the power of being alone, not as loneliness, but as liberation. Carl Jung taught that true individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires solitude, silence, and courage. Without them, you risk living a life written by others rather than authored by your own soul. The world often condemns solitude, labeling single people as incomplete. But in truth, solitude is the presence of self, a sacred container where intelligence and spiritual wisdom are given the space to flourish. As Henry David Thoreau reminded us, I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude, showing that solitude is not isolation, but communion with the deepest essence of life. Society feeds us a script. Find a partner, build a home, share a life, grow old together. It is a story of safety and comfort, but Jung urged us to question, what if following this script blindly prevents us from ever discovering who we truly are? Solitude, then, becomes an act of courage, a rebellion against conformity, not to reject love, but to insist that love must begin within. In solitude, you are not lacking, you are whole. You allow yourself to hear the quiet call of intuition, to sit face to face with your fears, to understand your desires without interference. Nietzsche warned, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." To embrace solitude is to protect your authenticity from being drowned by the noise of the crowd. Within solitude lies the wellspring of creativity and intelligence. History's greatest thinkers, artists, and spiritual leaders chose silence because it sharpened thought and ignited imagination. Jung himself retreated into deep solitude, and from that silence emerged insights that transformed psychology forever. Solitude offers what relationships and constant chatter cannot: uninterrupted clarity. In that sacred stillness, your spiritual awakening begins. You discover that solitude is not punishment, but privilege, a place where you can integrate wounds, expand wisdom, and build a self strong enough to thrive in stillness instead of collapsing under loneliness. To embrace radical freedom, you must see solitude not as a void, but as fullness. It is the sanctuary where your soul whispers truths, where your courage grows, and where your creative fire takes form. Choosing to be single is not about rejecting love, but about preparing for a higher form of it, the kind that only arises when you already know yourself. Without solitude, individuation cannot happen, and without individuation, authentic love cannot exist. Solitude, therefore, is not the end of intimacy, but the beginning of a deeper one, first with yourself, and only then with others. If you are walking alone, understand this: solitude is not your weakness, it is your strength. It is where intelligence deepens, where spiritual wisdom awakens, and where you free yourself from the chains of external validation. In solitude, you are not less, you are infinitely more. Rumi wrote, "There is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen, that voice belongs to your soul, and it speaks most clearly when you dare to choose the smartest path of all, the path of radical freedom in solitude. Comment below, I choose radical freedom, if you are ready to embrace the true power of solitude and live life on your own terms. 4. The illusion of romantic love. Love, for many, is less about genuine connection and more about a desperate attempt to escape loneliness. And Carl Jung reminds us that what most people call love is often nothing more than projection. The unconscious act of throwing our unacknowledged fears, wounds, and insecurities onto another person, mistaking dependency for intimacy. In truth, when people cling to a partner in fear of solitude, they are not practicing love, but avoiding themselves, creating a fragile bond that fractures as soon as reality no longer matches the fantasy they have built. Jung described this pattern as one of the greatest illusions of human relationships, because instead of embracing self-awareness and wholeness, many surrender to the comfort of being mirrored by someone else, forgetting that what they see is not the other's soul, but their own shadow cast upon them. This kind of projection, while intoxicating at first, eventually fragments the self, fostering dependency and stripping away freedom, which leads not to fulfillment, but to emptiness, resentment, and spiritual disconnection. To live trapped in such illusions is to give away your power of self-discovery, and it keeps you from the deeper work of spiritual awakening that can only be done when you face solitude honestly and bravely. Jung instead emphasized a higher form of love, what he called amor fati, the love of one's fate, one's destiny, and one's unique path. Rather than seeking completion in another, true love is found in the acceptance and even reverence of your own journey, with all its trials, mysteries, and transformations. To practice amor fati is to understand that your destiny is not something to run from by fusing yourself with another person's life, but something to embrace with courage, knowing that even suffering, rejection, or solitude serves a purpose in your unfolding. In a world that constantly glorifies romantic fusion, where movies, songs, and even social expectations tell you that happiness is found only when you find your other half, Jung's wisdom feels almost revolutionary. He asks you to consider whether love is truly about dissolving into another, or about standing firm in your individuality while respecting the individuality of others. This perspective leads to a more authentic form of connection, one not built on clinging or projection, but on shared strength, respect, and spiritual growth. Applied to modern life, Jung's insight exposes the hidden costs of relationships pursued out of fear. How often do people rush into partnerships not because they are ready to share their lives, but because they dread being alone with their thoughts? Social media amplifies this illusion, presenting highlight reels of perfect couples that pressure you into believing you are incomplete without someone else. But if spirituality teaches us anything, it is that true awakening begins not in the arms of another, but in the depths of your own soul. The ability to sit with yourself, to face your insecurities without distraction, and to cultivate inner peace is a sign of intelligence and maturity. It allows you to enter relationships not from desperation, but from fullness, transforming love from an escape into an offering. As Jung himself said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Real transformation cannot happen if one partner is merely serving as a mirror for the other's wounds. It happens when two whole individuals meet and awaken something higher within each other. 5. Marriage as containment. Marriage has often been upheld as a symbol of security and stability, built upon repetition, comfort, and routine. Yet Carl Jung warned that these very qualities can become dangerous for a creative spirit seeking freedom, originality, and spiritual development. For a soul called to grow, predictability can be suffocating because true inspiration, groundbreaking ideas, and deep artistic expression are rarely born from compromise or conformity. They are born from silence, solitude, and even the chaos of the unknown. Jung himself chose solitude not out of rejection of love, but out of devotion to the inner journey, understanding that the deepest truths of the psyche and the sparks of creativity reveal themselves only when one dares to face oneself without distraction. Solitude, to him, was not emptiness, but a sacred container where spirituality unfolds and the unconscious whispers its secrets, where shadows can be confronted and the authentic self can emerge in its raw, unfiltered power. In contrast, the traditional framework of marriage often risks becoming a containment chamber, where the individual unconsciously trades authenticity for comfort, passion for predictability, and spiritual awakening for social approval. When life becomes governed by stability at all costs, the fire of self-discovery dims, and the higher calling of the soul is postponed in the name of security. This is why Jung asked us to consider whether we are truly living our own lives or merely following a script written by tradition and reinforced by society. If you look deeply, you may recognize that the moments when you felt most alive were not when you were following rules, but when you were listening to the quiet voice of your own soul, often in solitude. In today's world, where we are constantly pressured to pair up, to see singleness as failure and marriage as the ultimate achievement, Jung's message is radical but liberating. What if being single is not a lack, but a strength? What if it is not loneliness, but liberation? Not emptiness, but expansion? Choosing solitude grants you the chance to explore your passions without dilution, to listen to your inner voice without interruption, and to cultivate spiritual clarity that constant compromise can never allow. It is in solitude that spirituality deepens, that creativity awakens, and that the individual learns to stand fully in their own light. By walking this path, you grant yourself the freedom to develop your mind, strengthen your spirit, and shape a life aligned with your truest essence. This is why being single, far from being a weakness, can be one of the smartest decisions of your life. It creates space for growth, courage, and authentic living. The lesson is not to reject connection, but to understand that no relationship should ever serve as a cage. Your highest companion is your awakened soul. And once you learn to stand in that truth, you will no longer settle for containment, but instead live a life free, creative, and spiritually alive. Leave your likes and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you never miss insightful content like this. Share your voice in the comments by declaring, "I choose freedom over containment," to affirm your journey toward wisdom and authentic living. 6. The creative power of aloneness. Being single is often misunderstood as a state of emptiness, Yet Carl Jung and other great minds revealed that solitude is one of the smartest choices you can make because it allows the mind to expand freely without interruption or the constant noise of compromise. In solitude, your intelligence is no longer scattered across emotional negotiations or drained by daily demands. Instead, it becomes focused, powerful, and deeply creative. Solitude is not the absence of love, but the presence of clarity, a protective boundary where your energy is preserved and your inner voice can be heard. Albert Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind," reminding us that silence is not weakness, but the foundation of discovery. History shows us that some of the most intelligent and visionary thinkers thrived in solitude. Nikola Tesla chose isolation because he understood that distractions would corrupt the purity of his ideas. And through that silence, he envisioned technologies that shaped the modern world. Albert Camus, too, embraced solitude as the soil from which his philosophy grew, producing works that challenged society and redefined meaning itself. Einstein, Tesla, Camus, they were not escaping loneliness, but stepping into presence, a state where spiritual wisdom and creativity flourish unchallenged. Being single, then, is not about what you lack, but about what you gain. The ability to be fully present with your own consciousness and to cultivate intelligence without compromise. Carl Jung taught that individuality is often lost in the collective, and the true work of the soul begins when one dares to step away from the crowd. Solitude offers that opportunity. It allows you to turn inward, to examine your own depths, to meet your shadow, and to awaken to the archetypal wisdom that lies beneath ordinary awareness. Jung reminded us, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." In your aloneness, you are not running from connection, but awakening to a higher form of it. Connection with yourself, your unconscious, and the timeless patterns that guide human life. This is spiritual awakening in its truest form. The courage to sit with yourself and to find meaning not in the validation of others, but in the intelligence that rises from silence. When you embrace being single, solitude becomes a workshop for your soul. It sharpens your perception, fuels your creativity, and teaches you to stand strong in authenticity. In a world that demands constant companionship and social proof, the choice to remain alone becomes an act of intelligence, a declaration that your energy will not be wasted on superficial attachments. Solitude is where spiritual wisdom is cultivated. It is where you learn to trust your intuition, follow your inner guidance, and align with a purpose that transcends the ordinary. The quiet mind becomes the birthplace of profound insights, lasting transformation, and ideas powerful enough to shift the world. To be single is not to be incomplete. It is to be free, unbounded, and in alignment with your deepest self. Like Jung, Einstein, Tesla, and Camus, you too can choose the sacred path of solitude, not as an escape, but as a commitment to your intelligence and your awakening. When you stop fearing silence and start embracing it, you discover that solitude is not a void. It is the richest space for growth, wisdom, and creation, and perhaps the smartest decision you will ever make. 7. Freedom versus adaptation. Most people call adaptation peace, but what they really mean is surrender. Because the moment you silence your truth to fit into society's expectations, you are no longer at peace with yourself. You are simply complying. Carl Jung revealed that this kind of false harmony is dangerous to the soul. for it erases individuality and forces you into a mold that was never yours to begin with. Real freedom, on the other hand, is not soft or comfortable. It is dangerous because it disrupts the illusions people rely on. It is lonely because few dare to walk that path, and it is misunderstood because most people fear what they cannot control. Yet within that difficulty lies something priceless: wholeness and sovereignty. To choose freedom is to choose authenticity, and authenticity is the seed of spiritual awakening. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And those words remind us that true intelligence does not lie in pleasing others, but in becoming whole within ourselves. When you stop adapting blindly and begin choosing yourself, you reclaim power that was always yours. Suddenly, you are no longer predictable because you cannot be manipulated by fear, shame, or the constant need for approval. You walk with a kind of strength that unsettles others because your choices are no longer dictated by external validation, but by inner alignment. This is what makes you truly free to live in truth rather than performance. In today's world, where social media teaches us to chase likes and society tells us to follow scripts of career, marriage, and success, the courage to stand alone is revolutionary. To resist adaptation is to reclaim sovereignty over your life, to say that your spirit is not for sale, and to embody spirituality in its highest form. Spiritual awakening is not about escaping reality. It is about standing so deeply in your truth that you refuse to abandon yourself for the comfort of belonging. Choosing freedom over adaptation is costly. It may isolate you. It may strip you of false relationships, and it may force you to confront your own solitude. But that solitude is sacred because it reveals who you are when there is no one left to impress. It teaches you that real peace is not the silence of conformity, but the stillness of living in alignment with your soul. When you dare to claim your own path, you discover that the greatest victory is not winning society's approval, but living a life that cannot be dictated by anyone but you. And in that moment, you are not only free, you are whole. Do you see freedom as your true path, beyond mere adaptation? If you do, declare it boldly in the comments. I choose freedom over adaptation. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom so you never miss more empowering insights like this. 8. Becoming whole. Becoming whole is the highest expression of love you can give yourself, because true growth begins when you refuse to abandon your own essence, when you no longer sacrifice your inner truth for fleeting approval or shallow connection. Solitude, far from being an emptiness to fear, is the sacred ground where your integrity is tested, your vision is refined, and your authentic identity is forged. In the silence of being alone, the noise of the world falls away, and the voice of your soul grows louder, guiding you toward clarity and self-knowledge. Carl Jung once observed that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate what matters most to you. And in this wisdom lies a powerful reminder. Staying single is not a rejection of love. It is a choice to honor your journey of becoming complete in yourself before you ever seek completion in another. To walk the path of singleness with awareness is to embrace the gift of spiritual development, where spirituality becomes a lived reality rather than a distant idea, where every moment of solitude becomes an invitation to listen, to heal, and to transform. Too often people run into relationships as an escape from their own emptiness, hoping someone else will silence the discomfort they feel inside, only to discover later that the same shadows follow them. But when you face yourself in solitude, when you turn inward instead of running outward, you discover that your worth is not tied to another person's recognition, but is rooted in the sacred truth that you are already whole. Singleness, when embraced with intention, is not about avoidance, but empowerment. It is about reclaiming your energy from constant distraction, channeling it into creativity, self-discovery, and vision. It allows you to stand in your own strength and meet love not as a desperate seeker, but as a conscious equal. In a world that pressures you with timelines and scripts, marry by this age, conform to that path, build according to society's checklist, it takes real intelligence and spiritual wisdom to step away and declare that your soul's growth matters more than external approval. Solitude, then, is not punishment, but preparation. It is the quiet space where you shape a self so strong that no relationship can break it, and so full that no absence can diminish it. To be single is to stand boldly in the truth that love should never be a crutch, but a conscious expansion, and that expansion always begins with you. The lesson is clear. Never abandon yourself for the illusion of belonging. Never mute your inner voice for the comfort of conformity. And never forget that the most sacred responsibility you hold is to your own soul. In honoring that responsibility, you not only awaken to the beauty of spirituality, but you also create the foundation for the only kind of love worth having, one that is free, conscious, and unshakable. And so, the choice to remain single is not about isolation. It's about intelligence, freedom, and the courage to walk your own path. Carl Jung reminds us that only by embracing solitude can we hear the true voice of our soul and live authentically. If this message resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself and share it with others who may need this wisdom. And before you go, remember to like this video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming insights into the deeper truths of life. When a narcissist sees you as too dangerous to manipulate, they'll try this one trick. The most dangerous thing is to think you know the mind of another person, when in truth, you only know the reflection they've allowed you to see. Carl Jung's insights into human nature remind us that manipulation thrives in the shadows of what is unseen. In today's world, learning to recognize the hidden tactics of narcissists isn't just self-defense, it's self-liberation. When you become too strong for them to control, they often resort to one final, subtle, and deeply destructive trick. In this video, we'll uncover exactly what that is, why it works, and how you can protect your peace and power. As you watch, I invite you to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever sensed someone trying to twist the truth when they couldn't control you? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's open a conversation that empowers us all. 1. Jung's core insight. Narcissists live through a meticulously crafted persona, a mask that becomes their entire identity, concealing an inflated ego built to hide an ocean of unprocessed shame. Carl Jung understood that this mask is not just a social disguise, but a psychological fortress, a shield that protects the narcissist's most fragile truths. Beneath their charm and apparent confidence lies a soul terrified of exposure, a self so deeply disconnected from authenticity that its survival depends on maintaining the illusion at all costs. The moment you see through that mask and refuse to be drawn into their manipulation, you are not simply rejecting a person, you are striking at the very foundation of their psychological survival. This is why your clarity feels like a threat to them. It reveals the emptiness behind their performance, and to a narcissist, that truth is unbearable. Jung's exploration of the human psyche revealed that every person carries both light and shadow, the visible virtues we share with the world and the hidden flaws, fears, and wounds we suppress. For narcissists, the shadow is an untouchable prison of inadequacy, shame, and fear they cannot afford to confront. To survive, they inflate the persona and deny the shadow's existence, building a false self so convincing that they begin to live inside it. When someone refuses to play along with their narrative, when they are immune to charm, intimidation, or guilt, the narcissist experiences a kind of psychological injury that feels like annihilation. In that moment, you become a mirror reflecting back the truth of their soul, and they will do anything to shatter that reflection before it forces them to face themselves. This is why, as Jung warned, when a narcissist sees you as too dangerous to manipulate, they rarely disappear quietly. Instead, they often initiate a calculated smear campaign, subtly or overtly attempting to discredit you, rewrite events, and turn others against you. It is a desperate strategy to control the story and protect the image they have built. If they cannot control you, they will try to control the perception of you in the eyes of others. This is not merely an act of malice. It is a defense mechanism born from the fear that exposure will collapse the identity they have spent a lifetime constructing. Their soul, trapped in its own illusions, views the revelation of truth as a fatal wound. To understand this is to stop taking their behavior personally. It is to recognize that their aggression, their campaigns of deception, and their attempts to undermine you are not reflections of your worth, but symptoms of their terror at confronting the parts of themselves they have buried. The more you see this clearly, the more you free yourself from their web. You begin to guard your boundaries without guilt, to stand in truth without wavering. And in that clarity, you develop what Jung might call a form of spiritual immunity, a strength of soul that no mask, no manipulation, and no false narrative can penetrate. 2. 3 stages when they lose control. When a narcissist realizes they cannot control you, the game shifts through 3 distinct stages, each more calculated than the last. The first is the testing phase, where they conduct subtle but deliberate psychological reconnaissance to locate your emotional weak points. They probe with small remarks, half-joking criticisms, or questions that feel just a little too personal, all while appearing casual or even charming. These moments are not innocent. They are strategic, designed to map out your insecurities and measure how easily you can be swayed. In this stage, they are observing your soul like a hunter tracking prey, noting every flinch, hesitation, or spark of doubt to determine where they might strike later. When these probes fail to break your confidence, they enter the escalation phase. Here, subtlety vanishes, replaced by direct psychological warfare. Gaslighting becomes a tool of choice, twisting facts until you question your own memory. Projection follows, as they assign you the flaws motives, or mistakes that are actually theirs, shifting the blame and the emotional weight onto you. And when their influence alone is not enough, they recruit flying monkeys, others who spread their distorted narrative and help isolate you from sources of support. This is the point where the manipulations become relentless, draining your energy and attempting to make your emotional walls crumble so that they can step back into control. If you still refuse to bend, they reach the recognition phase the moment they realize you are immune to their tactics. This is when narcissistic mortification sets in, a deep psychic wound that comes from having their grandiose image shattered. Losing control over you is more than just a personal defeat. It's a blow to their identity because they depended on you as a mirror to reflect their own sense of power. In this stage, they will often turn to their final tactic. Sometimes it's a sudden withdrawal, as if you no longer matter. Other times, it's an unexpected act of warmth, a compliment they never gave before, an apology dripping with charm, or a display of vulnerability meant to pull you back in. This is not genuine change. It is a calculated move to re-establish the dynamic they once had over you. These 3 stages of testing, escalation, and recognition play out in countless areas of modern life. A partner might start with playful teasing, escalate to constant criticism or public humiliation, and then switch to sudden affection when they see you pulling away. A boss might begin by questioning small decisions, move to undermining your authority in front of others, and then offer you special privileges when they realize you won't break. Each stage is part of the same pattern, and understanding it is key to breaking free. Carl Jung's insights into the shadow self remind us that these power games are often rooted in the parts of ourselves and others that we least want to face. By knowing your own mind, holding firm to your boundaries, and protecting the integrity of your soul, you remove the hooks they rely on. In doing so, you not only free yourself from their control, you reclaim the energy, clarity, and dignity that were always yours. 3. Final tactic: psychological inversion. When a narcissist realizes your spiritual awareness has grown too strong for their control, they often unleash one of the most dangerous psychological tactics Carl Jung would recognize as psychological inversion. This is where they deliberately reverse reality, casting themselves as the innocent victim and you as the cruel aggressor, twisting every detail until truth and lies blur together. It is not a simple act of manipulation. It is a calculated smear campaign meant to dismantle your reputation and sever you from your support system. They use truth sandwiching, weaving small, verifiable facts into fabricated stories so the lies feel convincing, and they dress their narrative in archetypal victim roles: the misunderstood partner, the betrayed friend, the wounded soul who tried everything but was treated unfairly. They know human nature gravitates toward protecting the vulnerable, so they target empathetic helpers, kind-hearted people eager to mend what's broken, turning them into unwitting allies who defend the narcissist and amplify their distorted story. Imagine breaking free from a controlling colleague who has quietly undermined you for months, only to discover that mutual coworkers now avoid you, having heard you were unstable or aggressive. Every attempt to explain is met with skepticism because the narcissist's narrative has already been seeded in their minds, and your truth is twisted to fit their victim script. This tactic is designed not just to damage your name, but to fracture your perception of reality, making you question your own memories and emotions. Without awareness, even intelligent, well-meaning people can fall for it. Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." And it is this inner knowing of your spiritual clarity that becomes their greatest fear. They want to drag you back into the role you've outgrown, but holding firm in your integrity robs them of power. You do not need to convince everyone of your innocence. You only need to remain unshaken in your truth. The lies may spread, but they are temporary shadows, and truth, like light, eventually breaks through. Your task is to stay anchored, knowing that your spiritual strength is the one thing they cannot corrupt, and it is exactly what will outlast their chaos. 4. Isolation and character assassination. When a narcissist realizes they can no longer pull your strings, they don't simply walk away in defeat. They pivot to a far darker tactic, one that strikes at the very heart of your soul. This is the stage of isolation and character assassination, where they move like a shadow through your relationships, infecting them with seeds of doubt and mistrust. They take what is most admirable about you, your courage, your empathy, your independence, and twist it until it becomes unrecognizable. Your confidence is painted as arrogance, your kindness as naivety, your decisiveness as coldness. In their hands, your strengths become supposed flaws, and these distortions are fed to others in whispers and subtle asides until people begin to question not only your intentions, but your very nature. Because they know the soul thrives in connection, they target your bonds, weaponizing your vulnerabilities and rewriting your story to fit the false reality they want others to believe. This is emotional terrorism in its purest form, where the battlefield is not your body, but your spirit, and the weapons are lies coated in charm and false concern. They might pretend to confide in someone about their worries for you, when in truth, they are planting the first seeds of distrust. They might recall past events with just enough distortion to cast you as selfish, unstable, or dangerous, while presenting themselves as the reasonable, wounded party. Their genius lies in the subtlety. They rarely make bold, obvious accusations, instead allowing suspicion to grow slowly, like mold in the dark, until even your closest allies begin to wonder if they've misjudged you. Carl Jung understood this projection well, teaching that what people repress in themselves, they often project onto others. The narcissist cannot bear the weight of their own shadow, so they hurl it onto you, ensuring that others see their darkness wearing your face. Over time, you may feel the walls closing in. Friends withdraw without explanation. Family members grow distant. Colleagues interact with a stiffness that wasn't there before. It can feel like drowning in a sea of invisibility, where your truth is muted by the chorus of lies echoing around you. And if you are not careful, their reality can start to seep into your own mind, making you question your worth, your choices, even your sanity. But the deeper spiritual truth is this: no amount of manipulation can corrupt the essence of your soul. The light within you is not theirs to touch, no matter how many stories they tell. Their power depends entirely on your reaction. If you rage, they will call you unstable. If you plead, they will call you manipulative. If you retreat, they will call you guilty. The way to dismantle their strategy is not to fight their illusions on their terms, but to anchor yourself so deeply in your own truth that their lies cannot uproot you. When you refuse to abandon your integrity, the smear campaign loses its grip. The people who are meant to walk beside you will see through the fog of deception, drawn not to the rumors about you, but to the steady, unshakable presence of your spirit, a presence that no act of character assassination can ever truly destroy. 5. Psychological warfare tools. When a narcissist realizes they can no longer control you, they do not simply retreat. They adapt, switching to a more covert form of attack designed to undermine your mind and weaken your soul. Carl Jung's work on the unconscious mind reveals why this is so effective. The more unaware you are of these tactics, the more vulnerable you become to them. One of their most insidious weapons is gaslighting amplification, where they work relentlessly to make you doubt your own memory, perception, and judgment. This is not just lying. It is psychological reality erosion, a deliberate breaking of your internal compass so that you feel disoriented and start relying on them for the truth. When you no longer trust yourself, they have the advantage. Alongside this, they often employ cognitive overload, bombarding you with conflicting statements, accusations, and emotional attacks until you can no longer think clearly. It is like having multiple alarms going off in your head at once, each designed to keep you distracted, overwhelmed, and too mentally exhausted to question their narrative. I have seen this play out in modern relationships, where someone, after finally setting firm boundaries, is suddenly hit with a rapid-fire stream of text messages, some filled with blame, others with pleas, and still others with subtle threats, all sent within a short span of hours, leaving the person scrambling emotionally and unable to focus on their own clarity. Another powerful manipulation Carl Jung would have recognized is trauma bonding, creating a repetitive cycle of intense emotional pain, followed by brief moments of relief, comfort, or affection. This unpredictable rhythm hooks the mind like an addictive game, wiring you to seek their approval even after repeated harm. It is the same mechanism that keeps gamblers glued to slot machines. You never know when the reward will come, so you stay, hoping for that fleeting high. The danger here is that your nervous system begins to equate love with volatility, making peace feel foreign and chaos feel familiar. In this state, breaking free feels almost impossible unless you become consciously aware of the pattern. Narcissists also thrive on false urgency and chaos, keeping you so reactive that you cannot step back to think strategically. They will create constant crises, springing last-minute problems on you, so that you are always firefighting instead of seeing the bigger picture. In the workplace, this could be the toxic boss who manufactures emergencies to keep you dependent on their approval. In personal relationships, it could be the partner who starts an argument right before an important day in your life, ensuring your focus is scattered and your emotional energy depleted. All of these strategies share one purpose: to disarm your ability to think for yourself and to pull you into a reactive state where they hold the emotional upper hand. The antidote lies in refusing to play the game. Carl Jung taught that the first step to reclaiming power is making the unconscious conscious. The moment you can name these tactics, you strip them of their hidden influence. When they push for urgency, you slow down. When they flood you with noise, you seek silence. when they alternate between hurting you and comforting you, you remember that your worth is not determined by someone else's twisted reward system. Your soul was never meant to be a pawn in another person's battle for control. And the more you understand your own mind, the less power they will ever have over you. True freedom begins when you stop reacting to their chaos and start acting from your own center, anchored in self-awareness and unshakable clarity. 6. Signs of the final manipulation. When a narcissist realizes they can no longer manipulate you, the mask slips, and what emerges is the desperate chaos of the final manipulation. A sudden, almost violent escalation designed to drag you back under their control. It's no longer subtle games or quiet psychological pushes. It's a storm meant to overwhelm your mind and spirit. They pull more people into the conflict: friends, family, co-workers, even strangers, spinning false stories and carefully crafted lies to make themselves look like the victim and you, the aggressor. This tactic of involving third parties is not for resolution, but for domination, isolating you and poisoning the perception others have of you. Their behavior becomes erratic, swinging between moments of forced affection and shocking hostility. They may shower you with promises of change one moment, then threaten you the next, using ultimatums, intimidation, or the threat of exposing secrets to keep you off balance. This is what Carl Jung might call control panic. That moment of spiritual and psychological crisis, when their shadow, the repressed and unconscious part of themselves, erupts in fear of losing its grip on you. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And in this moment, their unconscious darkness directs every move. They might sabotage your relationships, create false emergencies to pull you back in, or attempt to destroy the stability you've built without them. In the workplace, it could be a toxic boss undermining you in front of upper management when they sense you're ready to leave. In love, it could be an ex-partner starting rumors the moment they see you happy without them. None of this is random. It's calculated survival for them, because your emotional detachment is spiritual starvation for a narcissist. As Jung observed, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And this truth plays out before your eyes as they burn bridges, rewrite history, and create chaos, rather than confront the emptiness that comes from losing control over you. The key is not to be pulled back into their emotional theater. Their desperation is not a sign of your weakness. It is the clearest proof of your growth. The higher you rise in clarity and strength, the less their tactics can reach you, because your soul has moved beyond their grasp, leaving them powerless in the space where they once thrived. 7. Jung's defense strategies. Carl Jung revealed that the moment you become too self-aware, too firmly grounded in your truth, and too dangerous to be controlled, a narcissist will not simply walk away. They will change tactics, turning to more insidious psychological strategies. One of the most powerful defenses against this is the cultivation of psychological detachment and the observer self, a state in which you stop absorbing every attack as a personal truth and instead witness it as a passing phenomenon, like clouds drifting across the sky. This detachment does not mean denying reality. It means reclaiming the sacred space between stimulus and response, the space Viktor Frankl described as our greatest power, where you choose your reaction with clarity rather than being pulled into their chaos. In this space, your dignity remains intact and your soul remains untarnished. Still, detachment alone is not enough, because narcissists thrive on confusion and will often rewrite history to make you doubt your own memory. This is why reality anchoring becomes essential. By documenting events, conversations, and patterns of behavior, you create a solid reference point that cannot be erased by their manipulations. This is not about living in the past, but about protecting your truth from being twisted. Your notes, records, and evidence become anchors in the shifting sands of deception, allowing you to see reality for what it is and resist their attempts at manufactured amnesia. When you have a clear record, their gaslighting loses its power, and you remain steady in your own knowledge. Beneath both of these defenses lies the deepest work shadow integration. Jung taught that the shadow is the part of ourselves we reject or deny. Our wounds, our fears, our mistakes, but also our hidden strengths. Narcissists will try to use this shadow against you, projecting their own darkness onto you and making you feel ashamed or unworthy. But when you face your shadow and accept it as part of your story without letting it define you, you remove their greatest weapon. This integration transforms shame into strength and turns vulnerability into power. It is the moment you can say, "Yes, this is me, but it does not control me," and mean it. Once your shadow is embraced, there is nothing left for them to exploit, and your soul stands whole and unshakable. Through psychological detachment, reality anchoring, and shadow integration, you build a form of spiritual armor flexible enough to let you live freely, yet strong enough to ensure no one can manipulate or possess you again. These are not temporary tactics, but lifelong practices that strengthen your mind, protect your truth, and fortify your soul so deeply that even the most skilled manipulator cannot break through your inner defenses. 8. Outcome and empowerment. When a narcissist realizes they can no longer control you, what unfolds is not a loss for you, but a silent victory that speaks to the deepest transformation of your being. Carl Jung described this as individuation, the process of becoming whole, where your soul integrates its light and shadow, emerging stronger, clearer, and untouchable. Surviving their manipulation sharpens your intuition until it becomes a finely tuned radar, builds boundaries so firm they no longer need to be defended, and grants you immunity against the very tactics that once pierced you. Though narcissists project an aura of dominance and unshakable power, beneath that surface lies a fragile, fearful core that cannot withstand the gaze of truth. Once you see them as they are, the spell breaks, and their final, desperate attack, whether through lies, character assassination, or isolation, is nothing more than proof that you've already escaped their grasp. It is their way of admitting, without words, that they have lost. Like a swimmer who has spent years fighting waves only to learn the sea's rhythm and master its currents, you now move with a confidence that no storm can drown. Your boundaries are the life vest that never leaves you, and your intuition is the compass guiding you away from unseen riptides. In everyday life, this might be the employee who walks away from a toxic workplace, carrying with them the knowledge that their worth is not defined by a manipulative boss's opinion. At first, the echoes of control might linger, but in time, they notice a profound shift. An ability to recognize subtle power plays instantly and to dismantle them without fear, guilt, or hesitation. This is the spiritual armor forged in fire, a state where you are no longer reactive, only responsive, because you understand the game and refuse to play. Their collapse is not yours to manage. Their rage, their smear campaigns, their attempts to provoke you are nothing but flares in the night, signaling that your awakening has stripped them of the only thing they ever had the illusion of control. The truth is, your shield, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Survival becomes more than an end. It is the passage into sovereignty, where your soul is no longer a battlefield, but a sanctuary. In that space, you carry a quiet certainty. The very awakening they feared has already happened, and there is nothing they can do to undo it. And so, as Carl Jung revealed, when you grow beyond a narcissist's control, their final tactic isn't surrender. It's a calculated move to destabilize your confidence and pull you back into their web. Recognizing this pattern is not just about protecting yourself. It's about reclaiming your power, standing firm in your truth, and refusing to let manipulation define your path. If this insight from spiritual wisdom has opened your eyes, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming videos, filled with more empowering truths to guide your journey.